I used to think my greatest talent was logistics, moving pieces across a map, ensuring everything arrived exactly where it belonged. But 3 weeks ago, I realized I had spent 15 years shipping my life to the wrong address. My name is Jason. At 38, I'm the classic type A success story. I built a freight forwarding firm in Seattle from a single desk and a used laptop. I'm the guy who thinks in spreadsheets and contingency plans. I'm the one who knows exactly how many gallons of fuel it takes to get a semi-truck from Long Beach to Chicago. My life was built on the foundation of being the reliable one. When our parents passed away 10 years ago, I was the one who flew back to Boston, settled the estate, and made sure the taxes were paid while the world was still spinning for everyone else. Then there's my younger brother, Tyler. He's 32, a freelance photographer with $1 million smile and a bank account that's usually in the red. Tyler moves through life like a ghost, no lease, no permanent address, just a trail of expensive habits and big ideas. For years, I was his personal safety net. When he got into a legal mess over a misunderstanding at a music festival in Austin, I paid the $5,000 retainer for his lawyer. When he couldn't make rent on his studio in Portland, I was the one writing the check. I viewed him as my cross to bear, the restless soul I had to anchor, because that's what family does. I thought I was being a protector. I thought our bond was written in stone. But while I was busy being the architect of his survival, I never noticed he was quietly dismantling the foundation of my own home, one secret at a time. Then there was Sarah. We met in our late 20s, and she was the only person who could make me turn off my phone and forget about shipping manifests. We wanted the whole American dream, the house with the yard in Bellevue, the golden retriever, and kids running through the sprinklers. But life doesn't always follow a contract. For 4 years, our bedroom stopped being a sanctuary and became a clinical workspace. We went through 3 rounds of IVF, countless hormone injections, and enough specialist appointments to buy a fleet of new trucks. Each failed cycle felt like a funeral. I watched the light go out of Sarah's eyes, and instead of holding her through the dark, I did what I do best. I worked. I took on every high-pressure contract from Vancouver to San Diego. I stayed late in the office, chasing 6-figure bonuses to cover the $80,000 we had already poured into fertility clinics. I thought I was being the provider. I thought that by paying for the miracle, I was saving our marriage. I was so focused on the invoices that I didn't see the distance growing between us. I didn't notice when her "I'm okay" started sounding like a script. I was out there building a kingdom for a family that didn't exist yet, leaving Sarah alone in a silent house. And while I was looking at spreadsheets in hotel rooms halfway across the country, she was looking for comfort. I just never imagined she'd find it in the one person I told her she could always trust. When the news finally came, it felt like the universe had finally balanced the books. After years of silence, we weren't just having a baby, we were having 2. When Lou and Miles were born, the world shifted on its axis. I remember sitting in that sterile hospital room in Seattle, looking at those 2 tiny lives, and feeling a level of terror and devotion I hadn't known existed. I promised them right then they would never want for anything. The next 5 years were a blur of firsts. I threw myself into fatherhood with the same precision I used to build my company. I spent 3 weekends in the humidity of a Washington summer building a custom cedar playground in our backyard, towering slides, professional grade swings, the works. I wanted them to have a fortress of joy. I already had their futures mapped out. I opened 529 college savings plans before they could even walk, obsessively calculating the compound interest needed to send them to Stanford or MIT. Every late-night flight, every grueling negotiation with union reps, it was all for the boys. I used to watch them play in the yard, Leah with my stubborn chin and Miles with those bright, curious eyes, and I'd feel this overwhelming pride. I was the patriarch. I had finally secured the legacy I'd worked 20 years for. I was so blinded by that pride that I never looked closely at the mirror. I saw what I wanted to see. My sons. I never stopped to wonder why, as they grew. They looked less like the man who was working himself to death for them, and more like the man who was sleeping on my couch and drinking my expensive scotch. The beginning of the end started with a simple elementary school flyer. The twins' kindergarten class was doing a Heritage and Roots Week. They were supposed to draw their family tree and talk about where their ancestors came from. In a house like ours, we don't do things halfway. I didn't want the boys just coloring a piece of cardboard. I wanted them to have the full picture. I ordered 3 of those high-end ancestry and health kits, the $150 ones that analyze everything from your lineage to your genetic predispositions. I thought it would be a cool bonding experience, a way to show Lyra and Miles their New England roots and maybe even find some distant cousins in Ireland or Germany. I remember the night I brought the kits home. Sarah's reaction was the first red flag I chose to ignore. She didn't look excited. She looked like she'd just seen a ghost. She started arguing that they were too young, that we shouldn't have our private data on some corporate server, that it was a waste of money. I laughed it off. I told her she was being paranoid. I even made a joke about it. What? Are you worried we'll find out you're related to some outlaw? She didn't laugh. She just walked into the kitchen and gripped the counter until her knuckles turned white. I chalked it up to her usual anxiety about the boys' privacy. I was so arrogant in my role as the smartest man in the room that I didn't see her panic for what it was. A desperate, last-minute attempt to keep a 5-year-old lie from exploding. It was a Tuesday. Just after 2:00 p.m. I was in my office overlooking the Elliott Bay, mid-negotiation on a shipping contract for a new client in Tokyo. The notification popped up on my secondary monitor. Your deoxyribonucleic acid results are ready. I remember feeling a brief spark of excitement. I excused myself from the call, leaned back in my leather chair, and clicked the link. I expected to see a map of Western Europe and a long list of distant cousins. Instead, the screen loaded a relationship table that made the air vanish from the room. There were the boys' profiles, but the numbers next to my name weren't right. I've spent 20 years reading data. I know how to spot an anomaly. For a father and son, the shared deoxyribonucleic acid should be 50%. My screen was screaming a different story. 20%. I blinked, waiting for the page to refresh, waiting for a glitch to correct itself. But the algorithm was cold and precise. Beneath their names, the suggested relationship wasn't son, it was nephew. The world went silent. The hum of the office air conditioning, the distant sound of the harbor, it all faded into a high-pitched ring in my ears. 25%. That's the exact amount of deoxyribonucleic acid you share with the children of a sibling. My mind raced through the logistics, trying to find a loophole, a mistake, anything. But there was only one biological reality that fit the math. I wasn't their father. I was their uncle. I sat there for an hour, staring at that digital death sentence, realizing that the 2 little boys I had tucked in every night for 5 years weren't my legacy. They were Tyler's. I didn't make a scene. In logistics, when you find a catastrophic failure in the system, you don't scream at the monitor, you hunt for the point of origin. I became a ghost in my own home. That night, while Sarah slept and the boys dreamed in the bedrooms I was still paying off, I opened my laptop and went to work. I knew exactly where to look. We shared a family iCloud account, a digital graveyard where backups of old phones sat untouched for years. I started rewinding time, year by year, month by month. I dug until I hit that specific autumn 5 years ago. I was in Chicago at the time, grinding through 20-hour days to close the biggest contract of my career, the one that was supposed to fund our final, desperate $20,000 round of IVF. While I was pacing a hotel room overlooking the Miracle Mile, a very different story was unfolding in our house in Bellevue. I found their message history. A text from Tyler. Is he gone again? Sarah's reply. Yes, he's in Chicago until Friday. I'm so lonely, TY. Come over. The guest room is ready. Then came the photos. The jokes about how I was too obsessed with numbers to notice anything. But the one that broke me was sent 2 weeks after I got home. Sarah wrote, I'm pregnant. Tyler, it's yours. I just know it. But Jason is so happy. He'll do anything for these kids. Don't ruin this. He has the deep pockets. He'll provide the life for us that you never could. He wasn't just sleeping with my wife. They had made a joint business decision. They had cast me as the unwitting investor in their project, a human ATM who wouldn't ask questions because he was too busy building their kingdom. I sat there in the dark living room, the blue light of the screen reflecting in my eyes, feeling the last of my warmth turn into jagged eyes. For the next 3 weeks, I gave the performance of a lifetime. I deserve an Oscar for the way I kissed Sarah goodbye in the morning and played tag with the boys in the backyard. Inside, I was a hollow shell, but on the outside, I was the same reliable Jason. I needed time. In my business, if you move too early, you lose your leverage. I needed to move with the precision of a surgeon while Sarah was busy planning our traditional big family Thanksgiving. I was sitting in a high-rise office in downtown Seattle with a divorce attorney who specialized in high-conflict asset protection. I didn't just want a divorce. I wanted a total extraction every evening after the house went quiet. I worked on the logistics of the collapse. I spent hours transferring liquid assets into protected accounts and documenting the years of financial support I had funneled to Tyler. Since the house in Bellevue was a marital asset I'd bought with my first big exit, I made sure the paperwork was ironclad. Sarah would have 30 days to find a new roof, but the real work was in the envelopes. I prepared 12 of them. Inside wasn't a holiday card or a family photo. It was a printed copy of the DNA results and the most damning screenshots of their deep pockets conversation. One for Sarah's parents, one for my business partners who thought Tyler was a great guy, and, of course, the gold standard versions for the two people sitting at the head of my table. I was no longer the architect of their comfort. I was the architect of their eviction. I watched the calendar, counting down the days to Thanksgiving, feeling a cold, mechanical satisfaction. I wasn't just planning a dinner. I was preparing a crime scene where the only thing dying was a lie. The air in our dining room smelled of roasted turkey and expensive Chardonnay. We had 12 people gathered around the mahogany table, Sarah's parents, a few close friends, and of course, Tyler, sitting there in a designer sweater I had bought him for his birthday. He was laughing, telling a story about a trip to Cabo he'd taken on my dime. Sarah looked radiant, the perfect mother of two beautiful boys. I stood up, tapping my glass with a silver spoon. The room went silent. I have a lot to be thankful for this year. I started, my voice as steady as a dial tone. I'm thankful for clarity. I'm thankful for data. Because in my business, numbers never lie even when the people you love do. I reached down and picked up the stack of thick, cream-colored envelopes. I started walking around the table, placing one in front of Sarah's father, one in front of her mother, and finally, the last two in front of my wife and my brother. Go ahead, I said, my eyes locked on Tyler's. Open them. It's a family history lesson. The sound of tearing paper was the only noise in the room. I watched the color drain from Sarah's face as she saw the DNA report. I watched her mother gasp as she read the printed text, the messages about deep pockets and using me as an ATM. The twins are 25% me, I announced to the table, the silence now deafening. Which makes them my nephews. And since Tyler is the only other male in the bloodline, well, I think we all know who the father is. The chaos didn't start with a scream. It started with Sarah's father looking at his daughter with pure disgust and Tyler dropping his wineglass, the red liquid blooming across the white tablecloth like a gunshot wound. I didn't raise my voice. I just sat back down and took a sip of my wine. The fortress was officially on fire, and for the first time in 5 years, I was finally breathing fresh air. The screaming started eventually, but it sounded like background noise to me. Sarah tried to grab my arm, sobbing something about the kids and it was a mistake, but I stepped back as if she were a hazardous spill. I didn't see the woman I loved anymore. I saw a fraudulent contract that needed to be terminated. I pulled a second set of documents from the sideboard. No envelopes this time, just cold, legal reality. I slid the divorce petition and an official notice to vacate across the stained tablecloth. This house was purchased 2 years before I even met you, Sarah, I said, my voice cutting through her hysterics. The deed is in my name. The accounts you've been skimming from are frozen. You have 30 days to pack your things. My lawyer will handle the rest. Then I turned to Tyler. He was shaking, looking around the room for an ally. But even Sarah's parents were backing away from him like he was a contagion. For 15 years, I had been his spine. I had provided the money, the cars, the bail, and the dignity he couldn't earn himself. And you, I said, leaning in close enough to smell the expensive scotch on his breath. The deep pockets are closed. I've already contacted the board of the foundation I set up. Your monthly stipend is gone. The lease on your studio is up next week, and I've withdrawn as your guarantor. You wanted my life? You can have the parts I'm leaving behind. But you'll be doing it on a barista's wage. I watched him realize in real time that he hadn't just lost a brother, he had lost his entire ecosystem. He looked small, pathetic. I walked to the front door and opened it wide, letting the cold Bellevue night air rush in. I didn't have to say another word. They left because there was nothing left to steal. It's been 6 months since that night in Bellevue, and the silence in my new life is the most honest thing I've ever heard. I moved out of the suburbs and bought a minimalist loft in downtown Seattle. No yard to mow, No cedar playgrounds to maintain, just floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the docks where my ships actually do come in. The legal fallout was surgical. I filed a disestablishment of paternity suit immediately. Watching Tyler's face in the courtroom when the judge ordered him to pay backdated child support money he doesn't have was the final cold click of a lock. He wanted the children. Now he has the responsibility. He's currently working 2 jobs just to keep a roof over a cramped apartment in Tacoma, while Sarah lives in her parents' basement, waiting for a settlement that is never coming. I sold a big house. I didn't want the profit. I just wanted the memory of it erased. I donated a portion of the sale to a local youth program and moved the rest into a blind trust. People ask me about the boys Leo and Miles. That's the part that people expect to be the hardest. And in a way, it is. I don't hate them. You can't hate a child for the sins of their creators. But when I look at them now, I don't see my sons. I see the living proof of a 15-year heist. I still pay for their medical insurance and a modest savings account for their future, not out of fatherly love, but out of a sense of legacy debt. I am their uncle, after all. But I am no longer their provider. Every morning, I wake up, make a cup of black coffee, and look at my reflection. I am 38. I am single. I'm wealthier than I've ever been. And for the first time in my life, I'm not carrying anyone else's weight. I used to be an architect of lies. Now, I'm just a man standing on his own foundation. It's lonely, sure, but it's real. And in this world, real is the only currency that matters. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments.